Sudarshan Tiwari holds master's degree in architecture and PhD in Nepali culture. His areas of interest are history, culture, ecology, and public policy. Served as Dean of Institute of Engineering, member of Madan Bhandari University of Science and Technology Development Board. Another panelist is Dr. Harilam Sal. He holds PhD in Education, Joint Secretary, Higher and Technical Education Division MOST. His areas of interest are governance and management and financing of education. Then another panelist is Dr. Beni Bahadur Dangi, who holds PhD in Chemistry, Assistant Professor at Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University. He will bring perspective of how different teaching and learning in Nepal as well as in the United States, because he has actually experience on both sides. Now with this, I would like to give a little bit of background before I start putting questions to have some understanding. We are talking about internationalization today, but why are we talking about internationalization today? Education used to be internalized at least for million years, because we do not produce all knowledge we use. We have to borrow knowledge from some people, some countries. So actually, the knowledge we possess today was created in different parts of the world. So from ancient time, people used to come as lecturers in Nalanda University, maybe in Purnagiri University. Later we started to going to Cambridge, started to going to Ham. So it was internalized all the time. The extent of internalization is different. The understanding of internalization is different, but it was internationalized. So the question is, why are we talking about internationalization today? Is it different? That's the question we want to pose. Because without understanding the purpose of internationalization, the rationale for international, and what we mean, it is very difficult to go ahead. I think the purpose of the conference is really to chart out some strategy for internationalization of TU and other universities. I think internationalization, basically we can connect to two drivers. One driver of internationalization is really pursuit for excellence. Because I have said we cannot create our knowledge. We have to bring experts from outside. And if you want to have talented students, talent is distributed more or less uniformly around world population. So if you want to have best student, probably you cannot limit only to Nepali students. That's why Harvard practically recruits from all over the world. And HAMCO recruits from Nepal quite a lot. It's because of talent. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is when WTO came into force, GATS came into force in 1995, education became tradable commodity. So that pushed internationalization even further. So two factors, one is really commercialization, another is pursuit for excellence. But pursuit of excellence also accelerated because of globalization. You have to compete in terms of knowledge generation and utilization knowledge for economic advantage. Because of that, that's the sole reason why so many people from Nepal go abroad. For example, Australia earns $25 billion from foreign students, which is more than Nepal's GDP. If we talk about UK's resources income from foreign students, it's 25 billion pounds. And 15% of the revenues are basically generated from foreign students in UK. So we were a little bit afraid yesterday to talk about commercialization, because it's basically professor's view. When it comes to probably financing of education, commercialization has big part. So now we need to clarify in our dialogue, discourse. Do we want to limit internationalization only for the purpose of pursuit of excellence, or we may not use here commercialization, because commercialization is ideological word. But universities do sell services. Even Harvard earns a lot of money from students. Many universities earn from students. So because of that, does this conference or the intention of TU is to not to talk about money, but only to talk about probably internationalization without money. Internationalization essentially means bringing foreign faculty, you have to pay money. Bringing foreign students, if you are bringing talented students, you have to provide scholarship. Talented students have a lot of competition for them, their talents. And then you want to have joint research. If you do not fund joint research, you are sleeping partner or partner without money, then you will be serving others' agenda. And joint academic program. Joint academic programs also means you need to have some sort of capacity which is compatible with other universities, which ask for investment. So collaboration without money is exactly what we have been doing already now. Do we want to limit to that, or what are other resources? In addition to that, we have to start thinking. If more than 50,000 students go abroad for study, bachelor's degree or master's degree, what it entails? Practically, most talented students have already left our country. And also we have lost a lot of resources. Don't we want to compete with other universities? If we want to compete with another university, we have to bring foreign faculty. But our policy says that we cannot employ foreign teachers. Right? If we want to beat foreign students, no, we have quota. We cannot exceed that limit. So I think the third and foremost problem in Nepal is we have not articulated why do we want to internationalize? How do we want to internationalize? And because of these issues, I would like to think we need to clarify these issues before we move to curriculum area, before we move to management area. If we would be able to, at the end of this conference, get some questions as to what are the basic issues we need to discuss so that we can have an internationalize which is strategic, which is coherent. So with this in view, I'm starting to ask few questions to our colleagues. I understand that these policy issues actually, except for our gentleman, no one will be able to answer in authentic basis. But nevertheless, we have to start asking these questions. So the first question I want to ask is to Professor Tiwari, because he has served as Dean of Engineering. And we also did have few, maybe some students, I remember Bhutanese and Indian, but not many now. So what do you think at this stage would be the main purpose of internationalization, and what are the elements of internationalization we would like to focus?
Now, I think that's a very important aspect to answer, because we have gone on this conference without actually trying to figure out why internationalize, and then only we can talk about how to internationalize. So I thought, of course, I didn't expect our moderator to ask me a question, so I just thought I'd make a presentation on how, what sort of internationalization we went through in the architecture department. That's where I have the experience. I was not going to extend it to Institute of Engineering, although there are a lot of things that we could say on that. So first reason why I think we should internationalize is when you look at the architecture curriculum in the Institute of Engineering, it is, any technical degrees now that got to be employable. So it has to, and it has to be recognized by many people. When we are running a bachelor's program, then it has to, the students graduate and they go for master's studies in other universities. So for that reason, there was a need to kind of go for internationalization. And I had a presentation. Is it going to come, or if it's not, I'll just go ahead like this one.
What we are trying to do, if those your presentation is somehow covered during
okay, yeah, I can just go with her question. I'd like to look at the architecture program itself. One thing the Institute of Engineering started with was with internationalization, because we started with, in 1968, as early as that, with the UNDP involvement, and we had all these international experts coming in and designing our courses, delivering our courses. And when we actually started the architecture diploma course in 1972, its first faculty was a Swiss faculty, because there was a Swiss volunteer in it. and then local people were involved, and I joined only in 1973. And when you go to the bachelor's program, you will see that we started first, when you talk about internationalization through pedagogy or through research or through curriculum, the first thing is to start any course, we look at the curriculum. No? So the curriculum in our case was written in association with the help of some international consortium, particularly of Canadian universities. And they came in, and for that, the curriculum was written with an objective to get accreditation from the agencies in North American countries. So with that kind of objective, it started. And if you look at our development, we will see that internationalization kind of became a part of it because, and I would claim that within Institute of Engineering, Architecture Department is one of the more internationalized one, because we followed up with this, and I think there are very early on, when you internationalize, as Dr. Joshi was saying, is one way is to get to international faculty. What you're talking about is, do you really need someone who has a kind of nationality from other countries, or can you also have internationalization to use a faculty which has been trained in other countries? So Institute of Engineering and Architecture Department actually had that great advantage because all our faculty members were, by reason of the fact that this course had never started in Nepal, so they are always graduates from other countries. So we had graduates from India, graduates from UK, graduates from United States, and graduates from Russia, all these people coming in, and they brought in the pedagogical part, because all of these were not really trained by the institute as such. So what I mean to say here is the content itself and the way it is delivered was kind of done through this international faculty that was available naturally in many of the technical disciplines. I think most of the technical institute of Tribhuvan University went through this cycle. And one of the very early things that we did was to sign a MOU. Yesterday, I think when Dr. Pokhran was presenting in the beginning, he was talking about the problem of inbreeding. That when you just have inbreeding, and that actually is a sure way of killing internationalization, actually killing our quality also, because internationalization, I think the aim should be to attain quality in terms of the education and degrees that we offer. The importance of, I think I still want to talk about the need to deal with local issues, what Dr. I think our Dean of Medicine was raising yesterday, that internationalization has to be respectful of the local needs, and particularly for technical disciplines, I think they need to address the local engineering or development needs. Now, having said that, when you look at the future, in engineering and other areas, it's not always easy to predict what are the works that the students are going to get in the future. So looking for the future also demands a kind of looking at the international prospects, what is happening in other countries. So one of the strategic approaches to internationalization should be to look at the job market or the development in that particular discipline in the overall world. And particularly for technical disciplines, I think it is international. It is not, it's very little of the local. The other thing that I wanted to note here is that we went in the process of signing MOUs for internationalization. So I think what is important is we should have a stable partner for making an MOU. Because it should be, we have internationalization is a process, and quality achievement is also a process. The research orientation is also a process that takes a lot of time. So we need to be benchmarking, and we got to be moving towards certain targets. And to do that, I think it's very important that we have a stable partner. In our case, we had the Norwegian University of Technology as our stable partner from 1990s to up till now, and they have been with us to develop our master's program, our master's research, our PhD programs. The architecture department started offering PhDs in 2002 with their assistance, and this built up our kind of research base. And one of the problems with the MOUs I have felt is that MOUs don't work on a level ground, and particularly it's always things like somebody is helping us to do something, and that is a kind of a killing attitude in terms of attaining academic qualities. Unless you can feel equal, unless you can feel that you are also as competent to deliver something. We expanded our MOUs in a different way. We also had this MOU with the Advanced University, but we also have South-South MOUs, like we have with Indian universities, and we also had with Tibet University, which was one of our, I think, most educating partners, because there we were trying to kind of internationalize there also, and we were learning internationalization in our own processes also. So I think this aspect that, the internationalization is something that should be able to give us a confidence that we are able to produce and we are able to cause the production of, let's say, qualitative and employable manpower. One of the first indicators that architecture department, I thought, was doing well was when one of my students found a job in Singapore without doing a master's degree. And many people, of course, find the job with doing a master's and PhD degrees. But here, one of our students went there, and it was one of the most advanced countries, and working for architects is not an easy thing, but that is what happened. And that told us that we were doing well. Thank you.
As short as possible, probably to Professor Scott. Now, Professor Tiwari has brought up already Nepal's perspective. If you talk about your university itself, what gains actually internationalization have brought to your university, and what are the main components of internationalization you are having?
Well, I think two things that we do. We certainly send students overseas to do programs, and I think that's been very important. We also bring faculty over who can spend the semester with us and doing research. I was able to host a gentleman from Korea who spoke very little English, but we could collaborate on several research projects and publish in that area. And it was largely due to the fact that he came in our direction. Quickly, I'm going to run back to that question, should we internationalize? If this was 1919, I would say, that's a very serious question to address, but this is 2019. We're academics. We share knowledge. We develop and disseminate knowledge, and we can't ignore the world. We have to be very engaged because knowledge moves so quickly, we have to access that. So I think it's absolutely critical. I don't think when we talk about internationalization, it's just bringing people here like myself. That's not internationalization. You need to get faculty over to other schools, and you need them to go particularly to conferences. There should be opportunities to attend, funded, to all sorts of global conferences where you can begin to interact with others and exchange ideas. That's how knowledge moves quickly. It's relational. Knowledge is relational. It's not reading Wikipedia. It's not reading, watching YouTube videos. It's engaging with other people and formulating good, solid knowledge that's innovative and sharing that knowledge. So the way we do it, faculty, we go to conferences every year, professional conferences, we learn, we connect, we hear cutting-edge research, cutting-edge ideas. All of this we can bring back into the classroom as well into our research. And to me, that's been probably my career has been the make or break for my success, has been largely through interaction with others, through professional organizations.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you have the experience of working in Nepal as well as in the US. So if you compare the type of internationalization we are having at Tribhuvan University and Florida University of Mechanical and Agricultural Engineering, what differences stand out? And what would you suggest practically for Nepal to change? Because you know the constraint in Nepal as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Joshi. First of all, I would like to, can you hear me well? Yes. Is it better?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just speak loud.
Yeah.
So first, please let me extend my thank you to the organizers. I'm really feeling privileged and very honored to be sitting here among all of the distinguished people. Some of them I knew before, but I met so many distinguished personalities, and I'm really honored. And I hope that I can do justice by being here on front desk. Having that said, I will also limit my answers to less than a minute every time. I will be trying to be very specific because a lot of these issues somehow have been addressed in past 2 days. So, also it is, I know that it's quite boring to listen to very long lectures say. Okay, so now coming back to Professor Joshi's question about my experience here and in the United States, how does that correlate to both places, and what can we possibly change this side or maybe even on that side? So let me give you a little bit of background then. I'm an alumni of TU. So I did my master's here 14, 15 years ago now. And then I also had opportunity to teach at the Central Department for 2 years right after my graduation. And then I moved on to the United States, where I did my doctoral and postdoctoral research, and then now I'm a faculty, and hence 50% teaching and 50% research duties. So what that meant is that I have been a student, higher education student here and higher education student there. Similarly, I have been educator here and I have been educator there. So what do I find interesting, or what could we possibly think about internationalization of Tribhuvan University? That was the original question. Very simply put, I think we need to look at major indicators of university ranking. This is the most important thing if you want to bring up our university to be well known, so that you can recruit students, you can go out in the market, in the world, and talk about that, right? So the major indicators of university ranking, we saw that some presentation yesterday, and now we're pretty clear on that, is a lot of peer-reviewed articles, a lot of citations based on those peer-reviewed articles. And again, when I say that, this is probably more applicable to natural sciences and engineering disciplines. So myself being on that side, also, I think those are major indicators. But how can we do that? And what is the difference that's creating these differences between the university rankings in most of the cases, right? So very briefly, I think I can list them as we need to do some curriculum development. They need to be updated. They need to be more interdisciplinary. We could possibly do joint degree programs between Tribhuvan University and any other international universities that you probably already have MOUs with, 160, but you can selectively get some of those. What is also important is faculty-student recruitment, which also have been addressed quite a few times by now. Another part of that is the faculty-student exchange in the programs. So more specifically, I think during the summertime, typically 2 to 3 months, for example, I would be very willing to come here and whatever I can do to do that. In addition to the year-round collaboration that can happen between different labs, that's another important point, I think. So the research collaborations is another very important aspect of that, which could move forward. So there is some specific example that I would like to bring up, but I think I promised to be 1 or 2 minutes, so maybe later I'll bring up some specific examples where we can collaborate on research. Thank you.
Now, based on the information we have, I don't think Nepal has a policy on internationalization as such. Nepal has policy on how to give permission to foreign institutions operating in Nepal. And that actually does not talk about internationalization as such, because it's about basically responding to WTO requirement. Because WTO requires that foreign companies or institutions are given possibility of operating in Nepal, business or commercial education delivery as Nepalese providers themselves. But the irony is that Nepal is at this stage discussing whether education is commodity or not. But we have signed WTO agreement on gas, which essentially says that it's commodity. We are allowing foreign companies to do business and asking questions whether Nepalese institutions should be for profit, not for profit. Can education be sold, or they have to be closed altogether? So in that context, now Nepal is loser, because if more than 5,000 students every year go to abroad, they take our money, best people do not return, and in addition, we are left with mediocre human resources, which will not meet challenge of development in Nepal. In these terms, the question is whether the issue of internationalization as such is being debated at the ministerial or policy level. Let's begin with this question.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir. I think the question you asked me about the government policy, but if we talk about internationalization of higher education in Nepal, from the government side, I do have one questions to the universities. Do we have such a strategy? Sir, you told me that we do not have policy. We take policy as such a higher education policy 2072 is also in practice. Then if we talk about Tribhuvan University, we do have Tribhuvan University Act, which is a special act out of other 10, other 11, 10 universities. If you see, let me cite the Tribhuvan University Act. If you see this para number 5 in Nepali, it's the Dakha 5. I mean, that is the Tribhuvan University Act is the special one than other rest 10 universities. In other rest 10 universities, I think they do not have the roles, functions and duties of universities as such. But in Tribhuvan University Act, if we see, this para 5 is about the role of the universities. If we go this para 5, 5 gha, I mean, MECT, we can say, university can carry out MOU with foreign universities. I mean, that is legal provision. Within that legal provision, Professor Tiwari sir, he already had carried out MOU with other universities. So I don't think so there is a lack of policy with regard to the MOU with foreign universities. We can do, existing act allows to carry out the MOU. The question is that whether we were able to implement it or we are able to implement it or not. If we see the another para under that 5.1, we can hire. I mean, if we see the Nepali word, let me cite in Nepali. स्वदेशी वा विदेशी विश्वविद्यालय वा शैक्षिक संस्थासँग सम्बन्ध कायम गर्ने. That can be done by the university itself. Number 5 gha. If we see the 5 nga, स्वदेशी वा विदेशी प्राज्ञिक शैक्षिक वा अन्य संस्था र व्यक्तिबाट आर्थिक सहयोग प्राप्त गर्ने तथा शैक्षिक कार्यक्रमहरूको आदान प्रदान गर्ने. We can have an exchange of faculties, we can have an exchange of education program. I mean, sir, you said there is one policy which allow to run the foreign courses in Nepal, but in that discourse, the government priority is that university itself, they can carry out the MOU with the foreign universities or foreign education institution, number one. If they do not carry out the MOU, I mean, the understanding between the, to exchange the program can also be done. Second priority from the government side. Third one is, foreign courses can be operated in Nepal. Now this is the third priority of the government. Almost 45 foreign courses institutions are running at this moment in Kathmandu and other part of the country. Number 4 priority is that government, students are allowing to go abroad to take the foreign courses, foreign degree, meaning that we do have this clearly stated 4 priorities. Number 1, university should be able to carry out the MOU within their own, this is legal mandate, they can do it. Number 2, they can have MOU, they can have an exchange of program, which Professor Tiwari already did it when he was in IOE as a dean. This is the legal instrument he used at that time, meaning that other institutions, other faculties can also do the same thing. Then third one is, we are also, if we talk about the WTO, and we cannot stop our students to go abroad. This is the very difficult situation to say that last year, if we see the more than 50,000 students are getting no objection letter for to go abroad. They are saying that all students are not for studying, but in our record, they can only go to once they get the eligibility letter from the foreign university. So, based on these legal instruments, we do have 4 priorities. 1, MOU, second, exchange of program, third, exchange of faculties. In order to bring some of the faculties, we need to justify that if such faculties are not available in Nepal, or such expertise are not available in Nepal, we can get the work permit for the faculties as well. This is the provision of the Labor Act. So if faculties are already available in Nepal, the government priority is that they should be employed. Let me cite one example from Tribhuvan University. Just one professor, he got retirement and he was kept in a temporary basis for some period. Now, the university, some departments, some faculties told, he told me that, no, now you cannot work with us because we do have our own faculties. That's the common everywhere. If the people have the good expertise, and we can use the Nepali people. If we do not have such experts, we can bring, although there are some difficulties to bring it, things are not clear, crystal clear, but policies are there. My concern is that we have not entered into the meaningful discourse in order to materialize all these policies into the practice. Thank you.
Kathmandu University has quota for number of teachers they can bring. And there is also problem with visa renewal. Same applies for students. For example, if student gets